Thank you. Okay.
When you're ready, sir.
Hi, I'm Barry Franklin. Today we're going to talk about GPS for success, skills, strategies, and secrets of superachievers. In my real life, I serve as Director of Preventive Cardiology and Cardiac Rehabilitation at Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan, where I've worked for the past 37 years. But really for the past 40 years, a passion of mine has been studying highly successful people in all walks of life. In this slide, you see on the left-hand side a little kid whose father is a world championship weightlifter, and he watched his dad, and just being surrounded by seeing his father weightlifting, he thought he'd give it a shot one day. The guy you see on the right is actually me. In 1967, as a gymnast at Kent State University, where I learned to do an Iron Cross and a number of activities on a variety of gymnastic equipment. At that time, my goals were really twofold. My goals were which new trick I was going to learn on the still rings, and perhaps more importantly, which attractive co-ed I was going to take out over the weekend. But as I began to contemplate those goals, I came to the sobering realization that those goals weren't going to pay the bills, or for that matter, lead to a meaningful career. And about 40 years ago, I became preoccupied with a simple question. Why do some people thrive while others seem to tread water and merely survive? I had just finished 11 years of graduate education, and I realized that virtually no college course had prepared me for the real-life career challenges I'd begun to experience in healthcare. To find out a little bit more about what I should be doing in the world of work, I started reading everything I could on leadership and success strategies and studied the stars in their respective fields. I looked at people like Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris. I looked at what they did on a day-to-day basis. Were there common things that these guys did? You bet there were. The take-home message is this: leadership, professional opportunities don't just happen. You create them by demonstrating certain actions and behaviors on a regular basis. I remember seeing a car bumper sticker. I have it at the bottom of this slide. You are your own fortune cookie. And it's very true. I'll discuss that over the next hour. Let's look at the next slide. At the top of the hierarchical order of human needs are basically two things that all of us want: food and clothing. But the fact of the matter is, as you look at these superstars, everybody wants to be somebody in life. I love this quote by the famous painter, Pablo Picasso. He said, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life," he said, "is to give it away." For starters, if you're a medical professional, you're in the legal field, I'd say put those damn books down and start reading books, the kind of books that I have on the screen here. I read all of these, and they're great books. And they'll really show you how to re-engage your career to maximize your success. I read the million seller, Good to Great by Jim Collins, the classic book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, the wonderful book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and of course, the best book that I've ever seen on success, Jack Canfield, by the way, the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, that's now sold well over 500 million books, The Success Principles. So these are the kinds of things that young people today need to start reading to excel in their career. That next picture shows me on the left at the age of 25 and me about 4 or 5 years ago. And what I'm going to do in this talk is share with you some personal experiences, inspirational stories I learned along the way about leadership and the setback road to success. I've got now more than 4 decades of work experience and association experience, and if I'd capture the essence of what I'm talking about in terms of setbacks, I love the quote at the bottom of this slide. Dolly Parton, "If you want the rainbow, you got to put up with the rain." In this talk, we'll cover 4 major topics: foundational factors, 9 strategies that I feel are essential for success, some intangibles, For example, heighten your visibility, commit to never-ending improvement, routinely exceed people's expectations, strive for greater rewards and organizational memberships, and then finally some final thoughts. I love this picture. I oftentimes get young people or young professionals who say to me, Dr. Franklin, I want to make something of my life. I want to set myself apart from everybody else so I can get the grant, so I can get into the corporation. What do I need to do? And I boiled it down to 3 foundational factors that really highlight the motivation, inner drive of people who are truly super achievers. Number 1, they love what they do. Number 2, they take 100% responsibility for their life. They don't blame the professor or the doctor or the CEO because they didn't make it. They find the way to achieve success. And lastly, focus on your contributions, on serving others. I think Tolstoy summed it up best. We love people not for what they can do for us, but for what we can do for them. Because serving others is really a fundamental ingredient of every successful person I've ever met. Pretty smart guy, lived way too short a life. Steve Jobs, 1955, 2011. Steve Jobs said, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Steve Jobs really did a phenomenal job in terms of information technology, had over 450 patents. Here's a guy who loved what he did and loved helping other people to achieve their goals. I was once given a talk at my alma mater, Kent State University, about self-responsibility, how important it is for success in life. And a young gal, I'll never forget her name, Claire Cosino, came up to me and said, Dr. Franklin, do you know what the 10 most powerful 2-letter words are? I've listened to your lecture, but do you know what the 10 most powerful 2-letter words are? And I said, you know what, Claire, I don't. And she said, here they are. If it is to be, it is up to me. I say this all the time to patients. Don't count on your doctor to do this. Don't count on the nurse to do this. If it is to be, it is up to me. You got to take responsibility. And people who are really, really successful say, I got to find a way to do this, period. Don't count on anybody else. I had the good fortune about 7, 8 years ago of serving as a visiting professor in the country of Thailand. My wife and I were over there, and the professor who invited me happened to be good friends with one of the richest men in Thailand. And when this wealthy couple in Thailand heard that a visiting professor, Barry Franklin, was coming over from the United States, he said, I'd like to meet him. And then it turned out that he and his wife were going to be out of the country when I was there, so he said to the visiting professor who was hosting me, why don't you guys stay in my house for a couple days? Well, I thought that was really, really nice. We walked in, and I remember seeing a palatial mansion. Clearly, these were very, very successful people. And I'll never forget walking up to our wood-paneled bedroom in a magnificent house, servants, and I paused at the hallway because there was a huge sign in English. And I read that sign, and it said, we become successful by helping other people to become successful. I said to my wife, we just traveled 24 hours to get here with several stops and change planes and so on and so forth to learn the universal secret to success. We become successful by helping other people become successful. Making a difference, serving others. The late Zig Ziglar, I think, summed it up best when he said, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. I got pictures here of 4 super achievers who had a profound influence on my career. Steve Jobs, who I mentioned earlier, Ray Kroc, who had an idea to serve fast food, inexpensively tasty fast food, and established McDonald's. Henry Ford, changed the way people move from one place to another, and also developed a phenomenal factory where people could make a good living learning the skills of a trade. And last but not least, Walt Disney, who unfortunately died at the age of 65 of lung cancer, chronic chain smoker. When I meet young people, I oftentimes say, what's your goal? They say, well, I want to get a big house, I want to make lots of money, I want to travel the world. And I look at them and I say, you're focusing on the wrong damn end of the chain, the wrong end of the scale. You should be focusing on these factors: service, helping others, inventing products, becoming a great employee where you are. Focus on the contributions, and the rewards will come. We're going to talk today about 9 strategies that I've identified after reviewing thousands of books, having lots of interviews with highly successful people. Strategies that really successful people generally follow, either consciously or unconsciously. Strategy number 1, they're optimistic. They look for the good in people and situations. Oftentimes, people say if you're successful, you're going to be happy and you're going to be optimistic. The fact of the matter is, I've studied this stuff, and actually, it's just the reverse. People are successful because they're overall happy and they're overall very optimistic, which leads them to being highly successful. Look for the good in everything that life throws at you. I love this little story. Australian Shoe Company sent 2 salesmen to the Australian outback. They wanted to find out whether there was any market for shoes among the Aborigines. They received telegrams from both salesmen. The first telegram said, "No business here, the natives don't wear shoes, wasted trip." But the second telegram proclaimed, "Great opportunity here. These people don't wear shoes. If I can convince them to wear shoes, we'll have a brand new sales territory." Every day, I see people who look at the same damn thing. Somebody's got a negative viewpoint, somebody's got a positive viewpoint. The superachievers in life always have a positive viewpoint. See this slide? It's a question I commonly ask when I'm interviewing new people. So how do you read that? There's really 2 ways people can read that. They can say, opportunity is nowhere, I'm less likely to hire that guy. Or they can say, opportunity is now here. People see the same thing, different interpretations. The superachievers in life are always looking for the positives. It's a guy who I've studied. He was Jack Canfield's mentor, W. Clement Stone, multi-millionaire. Mentored countless others in the fundamental principles of success, but he believed, listen to this, that every person he met or circumstance he encountered was meant to better or enrich him. He emphasized that every negative event in life that happens to you has in the seed of it an opportunity of equal or greater benefit. Accordingly, Clement Stone viewed life as a series of ups and camouflaged opportunities. When the latter occurred, he simply said, you've got to find the seed or opportunity the event provides and transition it to an up. He was so right. I look at my own life, and big things that have happened to me, they oftentimes happened after what I thought was initially a disaster, causing me to shift focus from one reason to another, and I ended up doing far better than I ever imagined I'd do. Look at life as a series of ups and camouflaged opportunities, and change that camouflaged opportunity into an up. Characteristic number 2, be a goal setter. Program your GPS. Know exactly where you're going in life. Classic study, Lewis Terman at Stanford University more than 100 years ago. He looked at 1,500 gifted children, all of whom had IQ geniuses. He looked at the relationship between IQ and achievement. What did he find? I love this. I love this find. IQ was not the major ingredient to success. IQ and grades didn't predict which people were successful. What did predict? He found three things: self-confidence, perseverance, and the number one factor, highly successful people throughout the world, they have a tendency to set goals and set goals in writing. Great study, Harvard graduates many years ago. Those Harvard graduates who had as a goal to get a job made X amount of dollars 10 years later. Those Harvard graduates had some inkling of specific things they wanted to accomplish, earned 3X. And those Harvard graduates who left with a list of things they were going to do over the next decade made 10X. There's no question in my mind, having goals leads to future success. Fascinating story. A guy by the name of Charles Schwab. For your older people, you probably remember this guy. He was president of Bethlehem Steel in 1918. They were second steel company in the U.S. He was a very, very wealthy guy, one of the wealthiest guys in the U.S. at the time. And Charles Schwab, being the president of Bethlehem Steel, said, I don't want to be second. I want us to be first. I'm hiring an efficiency expert. His name is Ivy Lee. He's going to come in and spend some time here with our executives, and he's going to tell us what we need to do to go from 2 to 1. And I want you guys to listen to him. Ivy Lee came in, met with Charles Schwab, met with a number of his executives over the next 2-3 hours, told them what he wanted them to do, and then left. And Charles Schwab said, "You're done?" He said, "Yeah, I'm done." He said, "And by the way, you don't have to pay me anything until you see the results of what happens here." He basically said to those chief executives, before you come in tomorrow, write down the 6 most important things you got to do tomorrow. Prioritize them. Cross each one off as you complete it, and complete unfinished items the next day and start the next 6. I've been doing this for years. It works. In fact, this little suggestion to the president of this steel company led to huge profits among their executives, among the company. And he called back Ivy Lee a month or 2 later and wrote him out a check, which in 1918 was a lot of money, for $25,000. Stephen Covey summed it up best. Make this one change in how you spend your day. Work on what's most important before you take care of anything else. Figure out the most important thing to do that damn day and do it. I love this commercial. Classic Volvo advertisement said, on the road of life, there are passengers and there are drivers. The most successful people in the world are drivers. They know exactly where the hell they're going. Moreover, they write or digitalize their goals and look at them often. Great book I read years ago by Sir John Hargrave said, and I quote, "Writing your goals is a gateway for transforming the world of conceiving ideas and believing to a world of achieving it. Until it's on paper, it's vapor." College professor walked in one day, had a big glass jar and filled it with big rocks. And he said to the students, showed them the glass jar, "How many of you guys think the jar is filled?" And most of the students raised their hands. Then he proceeded to put some gravel in that jar, as you see in this slide. "How many of you guys think the jar is filled now?" A few more raised their hands. "How many of you think the jar is filled now?" Very few, because they knew he was up to something, and he proceeded to put some sand in the jar, and finally he put some water in the jar. What's the take-home message? As you structure your day, you got to put the big rocks in first. Otherwise, you're going to fritter your day away with gravel, sand, and water. I got in the habit years and years ago of what I call your hour of power, where most people are sleeping at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I set my clock for 4:30 or 5 and decided before I go into work, the first hour, hour and a half is going to be on what's most important to me, putting the big rocks in first. Early to bed, early to rise makes someone healthy, wealthy, and wise. It's true. People who are super achievers, I find, oftentimes go to bed at 9, 10 o'clock, but oftentimes get up at 3:30, 4, 4:30. I met a president at the university the other day. We were chatting. She's very, very productive, very philanthropic. And I said, "What time do you get up?" She said 3:30 every morning. Quite remarkable. I work on what's most important first while everybody else is sleeping, she said. Characteristic number 3, be proactive, just do it. I love this quote by Art Williams. Art Williams was originally a high school football coach, made a ton of money selling term insurance, and today he's a billionaire living in Florida. He said, and I quote, your life is a direct result of what you do, not necessarily what you say you're going to do. I think it's so true. Share with you, when I talk about doing, a story about 5 penguins. Picture this, and let me set the stage for you. You got 5 penguins sitting on a beautiful iceberg. Looking outside, it's a gorgeous day. The first penguin says, wow, the water is so clear. I've never seen it this clear. The second penguin says, wow, it'd be wonderful perhaps to go in and go for a swim later on. Third penguin said, wow, I agree with you guys. I can't remember such a beautiful day, and I can't remember seeing such clear water. The fourth penguin said, well, if you guys decide to go in, maybe I'll go with you later on. But it was the 5th penguin that got my attention. What did he say? Hell, I'm going in. Too many people today are contemplators. You see sitting on top of that iceberg. They talk, maybe I'm going to do this, maybe I'm going to do that. The guy who takes the leap, who moves in the direction of his or her goals, what they want, is the one who's invariably rewarded. Say to me, Barry, you're presenting 9 success strategies. Is there a single most important? Yeah, it's this one. Move, take action. Keith Ellis summed it up best when he said, inertia is the single greatest barrier to success. It's also the easiest to overcome. All you got to do is act. Any action you take, no matter how trivial, will do the trick. The easier it is to make it on yourself, the easier it is to overcome inertia. Focus on a single step, the smallest thing you can do. The moment you take action, you conquer inertia. It's so true. Students say to me, I need to be more productive. Can you give me any tip? Yeah, only one tip. Start the damn job. Get off your ass and start moving in the direction. A body at rest tends to remain at rest. A body in motion tends to remain in motion. Overcome inertia by starting the job. If you talk to any super achiever, they'll tell you that is their secret to productivity. Tommy Hopkins. Tommy Hopkins today is one of the top sales trainer in the world. He came up years ago with what he calls the law of Goya. Get off your ass and move in the direction of your goals. This simple law is very, very effective. You have to do something every day. Take action every day toward achieving your goals and dreams. Why? Because the universe doesn't reward talk or plans. It rewards action. Characteristic number 4, be persistent. Recognize that setbacks line the road to success. Every successful person I've talked to said I had this problem, and so on and so forth. The list goes on and on. Love these quotes. Persistence, tenacity pays. Thomas Edison said, I had thousands of learning experiments before I invented the light bulb. Whether you realize it or not, Abraham Lincoln lost 8 elections before becoming president. Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken, suffered more than 1,000 rejections before he sold his first chicken recipe. And Dr. Seuss' first book was turned down by 28 publishers. I had a fascinating conversation the other day with one of the medical students I work with at Oakland University. She said to me, Dr. Franklin, I read a lot of your papers and your books. How do you do all this stuff? It's just amazing how productive you are. My answer was very simple. I'm the king of rejection. She said, excuse me? I said, I'm the king of rejection. You don't see all the stuff that I get turned down, major revisions and so on and so forth. Anybody who's been successful has had countless setbacks in life. Pretty smart guy, Thomas Watson, founder of IBM, said the way to succeed is double your failure rate. Wayne Gretzky summed it up best. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, go for it, is my answer. Whenever a young person says, I'm thinking about this, I say, no, stop thinking about it, take action. Go for it, period. I'm a big fan of this guy, Michael Jordan. And I remember reading the paper one day, And I saw a direct quote which really got my attention. It said, and I quote, "Michael Jordan, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. On 26 occasions, the coach said, 'Jordan, you take the final shot.' I missed. I failed over and over again in my life. That's precisely why I succeed." So true. Benefits of failure. Here's a quote that really got my attention. "I think it fair to say, by any conventional measure, a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale." Wonderful author, world-renowned. She went on to say, "An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded. I was jobless, a lone parent, as poor as possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. So why do I talk about the benefits of failure?" she said. "Simply because failure meant a stripping away the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was and began to direct all my energy into the only work that really damn mattered to me. I had an old typewriter and a big idea." Who am I talking about here? J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, that's what she said as part of her commencement address at Harvard University, 2008. Today she's a billionaire. Strategy number 5, be someone who asks for what you want. Reject rejection. Don't worry about somebody saying, "No, we can't do that." By the way, no 80 to 90% of the time means, "No, not right now. I'm not ready to work with you now." That's basically what it means. It's not a definite no. Recognize that. Pretty smart guy, Percy Ross, said, and I quote, "You got to ask. Asking is, in my humble opinion, the world's most powerful and neglected secret to success and happiness." Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen published the book, The Aladdin Factor. And in that book, they said one of the most important lessons young people will ever learn is to learn to ask. I remember oftentimes going with my wife, who's a far better asker than me, and they said, "This is the best price we can do." And my wife would say, "Can't you do anything more?" And oftentimes they'd say, "Well, yeah, we can take off another 100 or 100 and a half." You got to ask to receive. It's as simple as that. Number 6, become a master communicator. Improve your writing and speaking skills. Jack Canfield said this, "To an astounding degree, your ability to use our language and the depth and breadth of your vocabulary to the largest extent determine your income and future career goals." I've studied this. Lots of studies have shown that when college graduates graduate, if they've got the highest vocabulary 10, 15 years later, they've read the most books, they invariably are the most successful because they can express themselves both in the written word and the spoken word. Great story on the power of words, how a sign change opened people's eyes and their wallets. Let me set the stage for you. An old beggar sat on a busy street corner next to a metal pail, asking for spare change from passersby. His sign read, "I'm blind, please help me." Most people walked past him briskly. A young woman watched and was horrified at the fact that nobody was helping this man, and walked up to him and she said, "Sir, would it be okay if I could change your sign?" He said, "Sure." Not knowing what she had written, he soon felt like he had hit the jackpot as coins increasingly filled his pail. Later on her way to lunch, the lady stopped by to see him. He asked, "How did you change my sign?" She replied, "I simply scrawled some words that made people realize something they took for granted," she replied. She said, "I wrote, 'It's a beautiful day, and I can't see.'" Words are extremely powerful. what you say and what you write. Choose your words carefully. Blockbuster success secret. I oftentimes have young people who say to me, Dr. Franklin, I don't have time to do this and that. My answer is I love what the suggestion W. Clement Stone suggested to his early student, Jack Canfield. And he said, Jack, before we do anything else, I want you to eliminate 1 hour of TV each day. That's going to give you 365 hours per year to accomplish your goals. I want you to focus primarily on reading self-help books, inspirational books. Canfield goes on to say this habit alone, reading 1 book a week over the next 20 years would allow you to read more than 1,000 books. By applying even a fraction of what you learned, you'd be miles ahead of your peers in terms of laying the foundation for an extraordinary life. It's one of the key things, eliminating 1 hour of TV, and especially today, 90% of the stuff you watch is negative. Become a master communicator, I tell young people. Learn to improve your writing and speaking skills. Seek graduate training, education. Become active in professional organizations. Attend conferences, better yet, present at them. Leaders are readers, and talks are editions. I can't tell you the number of times I gave a talk, and 2 months later, 3 months later, somebody sends me an email, says, hey, I heard you in Cleveland, I heard you in Pittsburgh, would you come and do our talk? We're going to be in Las Vegas, or we're going to be in Hawaii. You never know who's there. Lowell Thomas summed it up best. The ability to speak is a shortcut to leadership and distinction. The person who can speak acceptably well is usually given credit for an ability all out of proportion to what he or she really possesses. Topic number 7, be a connector. The power of positive associations, collaborations, and relationships. He's a very successful businessman. I've read his autobiography. His name is John Assaraf. He was in the movie The Secret. Multi-million-dollar corporations. At the age of 5 or 6, he got involved with some neighborhood kids, and they were involved in stealing. They got caught several times, and his parents were really worried about where this kid was going. His parents said, we got to get you a job. They lived right across the street from the local Jewish community center. And John was given a job cleaning up the Men's Health Club. And John today says that job was the most influential experience he ever had, because he had a chance to meet with highly successful businessmen, sometimes overhearing conversations in the steam or sauna room and so on and so forth. And one day, interestingly enough, John found a $100 bill that one of the members had dropped. And he reluctantly went to the director of the health club and said, I found this bill, and they found out who it was, and the member gave him a $20 finder fee, but also gave him priceless information in the remaining time that he was there. Priceless information that wasn't taught in university courses or college curriculum. Fact of the matter is this, and listen carefully. People you surround yourself with can have a profound and favorable impact on your career direction and ultimate success. High achievers typically recruit great people and surround themselves with great people and treat them well and pay them well. They oftentimes join professional organizations in their areas of interest and become active in them. I became very active in the last 4 decades with the American Heart Association, American College of Sports Medicine, American Association of Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Rehab, the American Society for Preventive Cardiology, where I got a chance to meet the top people in the world, which took me to new heights that I'd never have gained otherwise. Understand the multiplier effect of collaboration, working with others, and finally appreciate the boomerang impact of mentoring and giving back to young people. Advertising agency empire builder David Ogilvy established a tradition of welcoming new executives with a gift of 6 wooden dolls, each one smaller than the other, one inside the other, also called babushka dolls. When the recipient finally gets to the sixth little doll, the smallest doll, and he opens it up, or she opens it up, they find this message. If each of us hires people who are smaller than we are, we shall become a diminishing company. But if each of us hires people who we think are better, smarter, more efficient than we are, we're going to become a thriving company of giants. Use collaboration to exponentially increase your productivity. Every year around Christmas time, I get a kick out of the Budweiser commercials, and I look at the Clydesdale horses. Then I read an article a few years ago that got my attention. One of those big Clydesdale horses in the Budweiser beer commercials can pull about 7,000 or 8,000 pounds, actually. Two Clydesdales working together don't pull 16,000 pounds. They actually can pull 24,000 pounds, and two Clydesdales matched perfectly trained can pull 32,000 pounds. People working together can accomplish even more. I'm reminded two stories. Steven Spielberg, I watched on television once interviewed, and they said, "Mr. Spielberg, you're a genius. How do you do all these great movies?" And he says, "Very simple. You want me to do your movie? You want me to direct your movie? You got to hire two guys. Steven Spielberg, but a friend of mine by the name of George Lucas. George comes up with all my special effects, and George makes me look good." The other analogy that I give you is Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen. Both were average writers. But when they decided to pool their resources and work together on the first Chicken Soup for the Soul book, which that book alone has now sold 11 million copies, more than 500 million Chicken Soups for the Soul, they pooled their talents to achieve success that neither one of them could have achieved alone. Number 8, be a people person. If you asked CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies, what's the single most thing you're looking for when you hire somebody, their answer is always the same: the ability to work with people. What are they looking for? What I call the big 6. Integrity. Somebody tells you they're going to do something, damn it, they do it. Number 2, people who routinely give more than you expect. Number 3, they're people who offer their employees praise and appreciation. Number 4, they're people who make other people feel important. Heard Danny Myers, founder of Shake Shack, who's now worth $500 million, said, "Mr. Meyer, if you were to give young people one thing, one recommendation on how to be successful like you've been, what would you recommend?" I said, "Very simple. Every time I meet somebody I don't know, I pretend they've got a sign around their neck, and that sign says, 'Make me feel important.'" Individuals who are simply nice people. And finally, don't tell people, show them. I worked with this young lady at the American Heart Association. Her name is Shay Kennedy, and I always admired her because she had the challenging task of working with the board of trustees members, CEOs of multi-million and billion-dollar companies, professors from Harvard, the media star who was on the board of the National AHA from New York, who was always you'd see on television. And I said, "Shay, how do you get along with all these people?" And she said to me, "Dr. Franklin, look at the bottom of every one of my emails. The bottom of every email, I have the same suggestion, the same caveat, the same pearl. And it reads, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice." I think in so many ways, people who are nice, all other factors equal, doors open up for those people. Here's 2 media stars, Katie Couric and Diane Sawyer. I remember coming home 10, 15 years ago and turned on the television. I don't watch much television, but I'm eating dinner and I see a lady interviewing Diane Sawyer, who used to do the ABC World News. And she said to Diane Sawyer, and this kind of caught my attention, "Diane, what do you think of the negative things that Katie Couric had to say about you recently?" And Diane Sawyer said, what do you mean?" And the interviewer said, "Well, Katie Couric said your interviews are dated, you really don't challenge the people you're interviewing, and that you're just not a very good interviewer. Well, by this time, I'm watching TV and I'm riveted to the damn television because I want to see what Diane Sawyer is going to say to this interviewer. And I swear she paused for 30, 40 seconds, and then she finally said the following. Hadn't heard what you purportedly say that Katie Couric said. It doesn't sound like anything that Katie Couric would say, and do I have anything to say? Yeah. I think Katie Couric is one of the most talented people in the news media business today. Diane Sawyer is a class act, and she exemplified it by those words. Another fairly famous guy, Warren Buffett. Read an interview by Warren Buffett. The interviewer asked him one time, "What's the wisest counsel you ever received?" Well, I'm thinking, Warren Buffett, wow, I got to see what he said. He said it was from a Berkshire Hathaway board member, and it boiled down to exercising restraint and humility. This board member, he said, told me, "You can tell a guy to go to hell tomorrow. You don't give up that right. But keep your mouth shut today and see if you feel the same way tomorrow." Why? Because the person you didn't tell off today may be in a position to open up a door for you tomorrow or in the near future, Buffett learned. Don't make enemies. The world is a small place. Go out of your way not to piss people off. Be willing to pay the price, the law of sow and reap. I got this as a fortune cookie one time. It said, none of the secrets of success will work unless you do. What is the law of sow and reap? To reap is to gather a crop, to sow is to plant seeds. Accordingly, future outcomes are invariably shaped by the actions you take today. They can influence all your tomorrows. When I see somebody who's very successful today in business, I know that he or she has planted lots of seeds in the previous years. The good news is we always reap what we sow, but always more than we sow and at a later date. In other words, to a large extent, you get back from life what you put into it and more. To me, it's like going to the casino and always coming back with more money, but you initially have to plant those seeds. Preparing for success, great Italian violinist Paganini was once partway through a solo performance when one of his strings suddenly broke. Then a second string broke. Then a minute later, a third string broke, leaving him with that violin with one string. He not only continued, but flawlessly carried off a virtuoso performance, even limited to that single string. As the audience watched in awe, his secret? He had put in long hours, practicing the violin without all its strings, and even composed music to be played on a violin with just one string. Professor Anders Ericsson summed it up best. People who are superachievers prepare for varied circumstances. Achievement takes preparation. Once you understand what an individual actually did to prepare for these kinds of things, it becomes so much more understandable. Beyond talent, hard work differentiates the chumps from the champions. Steve Alford played with Olympic medalist Michael Jordan. But Steve Alford was on the team with Michael Jordan, and I never forget this quote. He said, when I played with Michael Jordan on the Olympic team, there was a huge gap between Jordan and everybody else on the team. What impressed me most is I'd get to the practice day and Jordan was already out there, and I'd leave, the practice was over, and Jordan was the last one to leave. He put the time in. Malcolm Gladwell summed it up best. It's called the 10,000-hour rule. He said, and he studied people, and he said, you get really good at something when you've devoted 10,000 or more hours to it. Gladwell talks about businessmen, Bill Gates, musicians like the Beatles. They all prepared for their success. They prepared. I'm a big fan of the professional golf tour. Here you see three greats. Gary Player on the left, the late Arnold Palmer, and Sam Snead. Gary Player, now in his 80s, still playing professional golf, walked through an airport one time, and a guy looks at him and he says, ran up to him and says, aren't you Gary Player, the famous professional PGA golfer? Gary Player said, yeah. And the guy said, geez, I'd do anything to hit a golf ball like you. Gary Player, who's normally a diplomat, said to him, No, you wouldn't. Guy goes, what do you mean? Gary Player says, you know what you got to do to hit a golf ball like me? You got to get up every day at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, go hit 2,000 balls till your hands won't even hold the damn club. Go back to the clubhouse, have a cup of coffee, have some juice, have a bagel or a muffin, go back and hit another 2,000 balls, and then go out and play 18, 27, or 36 holes. You'd do anything to hit a golf ball like me if you didn't have to practice. Most people who do things really well have practiced countless hours. Intangibles. Visibility leads to opportunities. I tell people at a minimum, as you see here, there's a world of opportunities beyond your own workplace. Get involved with associations, presentations. If you can, get on the radio, television. When millions of people see, hear, or read you, a certain percentage of those people is going to want you to do your talk, to collaborate, and so on and so forth. Talk about professional golfers. I started studying the PGA in 2002. My question was very simple. What the hell is the difference between the number 1 and number 10 golfer on the PGA each year? Cardinal tenet of success. It pays to be just a little bit better. That year, Tiger Woods was the number 1 golfer, 68.56 shots. Sergio Garcia, number 10 golfer, he averaged 70 shots. What's the difference? 6.9 million for Tiger Woods, 2.4 for Sergio Garcia. But a company called Nike decided they were going to give the number 1 golfer that year a multi-million-dollar contract. Who got it? Tiger Woods, because he could beat the second place finisher by less than 100 shots, or less than one shot. Fascinating article about a cab driver in New York who makes $40,000 a year more in tips than other cabbies. What does he do? He has a choice of music, several newspapers, cold drinks, fresh fruit. In brusque Manhattan, his acts of decency make him stand out. Give people routinely more than they expect. I was on a Northwest flight years ago, and I sat down, and a big guy comes next to me. We're sitting in business class, huge shoulders, small waist, well-dressed, and he's got a huge ring on. I'm looking at this guy, and I'm thinking, am I sitting next to a Super Bowl player, and I don't know who the hell this is? I said, you're a professional athlete. He starts laughing at me. He said, no, I used to play amateur hockey in Canada. I said, what do you do now? He says, I'm the vice president of Northwest Airlines. He said, what do you do? I said, oh, I direct a cardiac rehab program at Beaumont Hospital. He paused for a second. He said, you know what? My dad just had a heart attack. He's trying to find out what he needs to do about cholesterol and so on and so forth. I had just written this book with Joe Piscatella. I took a copy out, gave it. I said, give this to your dad. He said, what do I owe you? I said, you owe me nothing. Give it to your dad. We're flying, and he says, you know what? How do you like Northwest Airlines, Dr. Franklin? I said, I think you guys are great, but whenever I call, I'm going overseas, I try to upgrade to business class, there's never a seat. He starts laughing at me again. He says, there's almost always a seat. I said, not when Barry Franklin calls the Northwest Airlines hotline. He said, you call me in the future. Can't tell you the number of times I used him for that $6 book. Strive for greater rewards. Go for the gold. Teacher came in and said to his students, if you guys know the final, I'll let you skip the final, and I'll give you an automatic B on the final. 26 of 30 students got up and left and thanked him. 4 students remained. He said, you guys don't want to skip the final? He said, one student said, no, I think I can get an A in the final. I studied really hard for it. He then proceeded to give out the final exam, a 1-page exam. He said, congratulations, you've just earned an A in this class. Keep believing in yourself. I tell young people, go for the gold. Magic of organizational membership. If I'd give you any advice, become active in an organization and dedicate your life to it. Dedicate your life to a cause greater than yourself, and your life will become a glorious adventure. Some final thoughts. The most powerful strategies to improve your performance. Early in your career, surround yourself with people who have skills and abilities that you'd like to emulate. Start making to-do lists. Start the job and begin collaborating with others who have skills, abilities, and resources you don't have. What's the Pareto principle? Pareto, an Italian economist, reported that 80% of Italy's land belongs to 20% of the wealthiest population. Many other fields have found the same relationship. 80% comes from 20% of the effort. It's called the Pareto principle. I say to young people, start finding out what you do that yields the greatest rewards and results, and start doing that on a regular basis. Time management. This is a great slide. Time management, my most memorable experience. I went to a sports medicine meeting. I saw the most productive guy in the world writing as he stood at the urinal. I said, Roy, what could you possibly be working on in here? He matter-of-factly replied, it's for a research report I'm writing. I love Henry Ford's quote, it's been my observation most people get ahead during the time that others waste. Great leaders bring out the best in them. Example, sometimes one person, by virtue of their words, actions, interactions, brings out the best in all of them. Here's an example, LeBron James, who took mediocre players in Miami and Cleveland and got the best of them. Don't tell people, show them. And finally, volunteer needed. If you're with the boss and the boss says, I need a volunteer, watch this guy at the end of the table standing right next to her. He raised his hand. That little maneuver, doing more than you're paid to do, oftentimes results in huge dividends. If you routinely do more than you're paid to do, ultimately, you'll be paid much more for what you do. Finally, take action. Give back. I remember going in to visit a professor who I had. His name was Herman Hellerstein. I drove 2 hours to visit this professor. I didn't know him. I'd heard him lecture. His secretary comes into the office, and she said, who are you? And I said, Barry Franklin. I said, is Dr. Hellerstein there? She said, do you have an appointment? I said, no. She said, well, you can't see the great and powerful Wizard of Oz without an appointment. I'm leaving there that day, and Hellerstein's walking down the hallway, and I stopped and introduced myself, and I said, I was hoping to get some career advice from you, but your secretary said you're busy today. He said, you drove all the way from Kent State? I said, yeah. He said, come in the office. Spent an hour with me that day. Never saw me before. Changed my life. Give back, as he did. Take-home message is this. Building a career involves investing time, effort, and hard work into things that matter. It's not a matter of circumstance, but of choice. Number one, love what you do. Number two, take 100% responsibility for your life. Number three, write down and think about your goals often, abandon perceived limits. Number four, get involved with a group or a cause bigger than you are. Recognize that persistence pays. Take action. Know that setbacks line the road to success. Exceed people's expectations routinely. Prepare for success. As Malcolm Gladwell said, you got to put that 10,000 hours in. Strive for constant improvement. Go for the gold. Raise your hand and generously give back. Perhaps songwriter Chris Doherty summed it up best in his blockbuster hit, I'm Going Home, when he said, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it all. Thank you very much.